everything is at stake with this organizing work. We're talking about mass extinction. My name is Zarna Joshi, and I am based in the Seattle, Washington area, and I'm a climate justice activist. I went to The Hague in my first year as a student, and that was where the world leaders meeting was to ratify the Kyoto Protocol Treaty. The Kyoto Protocol Treaty was, of course, agreed upon by Bill Clinton when he was president, and it was the next year, and George W. Bush was president, and his delegates walked out of the meeting. And I was right outside that building in The Hague with activists from all over the world. The Netherlands is a rich white country in Europe, so they have the resources to build giant seawalls and build giant protections for their white communities. But all of the countries and all of the island nations and all of the coastlines in the global south are not going to be able to do that. They do not have the resources for that. They do not have the ability to do that. And I was there with people who were from those nations, who were from countries and communities that had been devastated by the fossil fuel empire. And when I saw that, I realized that we couldn't wait for politicians to fix this. They weren't going to. The pollution in the ocean has destroyed 40% of the plankton. And that's direct pollution in the ocean from CO2 in our atmosphere, from all of the toxic waste that's coming out of our factory farming, our industries, all of those things that are just destroying the ocean. And plankton is the basis of all life. So if plankton goes, we all go down. It will be in the global south that not only different species of animals go extinct, but humans will go extinct. That means all the black and brown people in the world. And even in global north countries, so for example, even if we're talking about the United States of America, where are the majority of the people of color in this country? They are in the southern states, and they will be in trouble. When we're talking about what is at stake, we are talking about the fact that we have already begun to see a giant refugee crisis around the entire world of brown people and black people having to flee, whether it's because of climate disasters, whether it's because of fossil fuel driven wars, whether it's because of famine caused by climate change induced drought, maybe not even in their country, but in the countries surrounding them that supply their food. And this is happening all over the world. And when that happens, who suffers the most? Women suffer, children suffer, queer and trans people suffer, and marginalized people like gypsies, people like people from marginalized faiths, people who never get a say in anything, people with disabilities. They are the ones who are going to be suffering the most, and already have been suffering the most, because our patriarchal, capitalist, colonizing society that turns everyone and everything into an object to consume, they are the ones who get consumed first. So if we want justice, whether it's social justice, whether it's racial justice, whether it's economic justice, whether it is gender justice, whether it's disability justice, whether it's reproductive justice, whether it's food justice, you could go on and on and on and on. It is at stake when we're talking about climate justice. The truth is that the environmental justice movement has always been led by people of color. It could also mean poor white people, right? It could also mean women of color, right? It could also mean indigenous people. Environmental justice has always been led by those people. Those people always have the best strategies and the best tactics, because they're the ones who know what's really at stake. They're the ones who are on the front lines. And so because of that, they do outreach to their own communities, right? They do outreach to their own people. When we look at Standing Rock, right? Standing Rock never talked about, oh, this is about the climate fight. Standing Rock talked about how water was life. Okay, water is life. Why? Because that was what was going to connect deeply with their culture, with their spiritual practices, with the way they relate to their land and their water, the way they relate to each other. Without clean water, how will we survive? It is impossible to survive. And also because that is what connects with everyone. Every single person knows if we don't have water, we don't have anything. The problem is the environmental justice movement gets co-opted by privileged people who are not on the front lines. Often their messaging is very ableist, it's very racist without realizing it, because the privilege is so difficult, it's so thick, they can't move beyond their own bubble. And that has always been the problem for the environmental justice community, is that the privileged middle class white people co-opt it and then ruin it because they don't understand how to talk to people to build a movement. One of the lessons often from earlier movements is not only what to do, it's what not to do. And in some ways that's like even more valuable. You know, what not to do, put white man in charge. Because what it does is it alienates the base. And who is the base? The base is people of color, the base is indigenous people, the base is women. The base is people who are on the front lines. That's the real base. And there may be people with privilege who support, but if you only have a spokesperson who comes from that community, you will alienate all of the other communities. So never do it. What you always have to do is the people who are putting the messages out there, the people who are speaking, the people who are in the media, the people who are doing that work need to be people from those communities, because they will reach everyone. What is often the problem is that it's not necessarily that the privileged white groups are trying to be racist. They just don't realize that they are. And it's not like they're trying to be patriarchal. They just don't realize that they are. When toxic people speak, people with privilege need to check them so that the people from marginalized communities don't have to do it. And also so that the people from those marginalized communities know that these people with privilege are actually their allies. If they don't see that, there's no reason for them to trust you, and your coalition will fail. But that movement building has to be a steady thing that is continuously progressing, continuously building in a healthy way, because people see that you're acting on what you're learning. Whether you survive or not, whether I survive or not, right? Life on this planet must survive. I am hopeful because it is essential to be hopeful